Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. September is, in case you haven't heard before we end the month, I want to remind everybody that this is National Suicide Awareness Month. So our program today is in the mental health spectrum. And we have a guest, Dr. Michael J. Murphy, who is a co-author of a book called, very timely book, Opioid Odyssey, Discoveries of Recovery. And we're going to be talking about holistic ways of enhancing your treatment when you're going through the struggle and just give it a real positive, healthy approach. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me on. It's great to be here and to talk to you again and your audience.
I've read your book and a lot of good information. Tell people a little bit about yourself.
So I actually am a forensic psychologist. I've practiced, around the country, dealing with legal and psychological issues. So assessing situations that have to do with the law in some way, and then also testifying in trials with regard to criminal responsibility, competency to stand trial, legal issues like that. So a lot of opportunities to work inside correctional facilities. And I've interviewed many thousands of people inside jails and prisons here in the United States. So I'm very aware of who is there actually inside and what their stories are. So just many thousands of stories of people who have found themselves in jail or prison. And almost always, as you probably are aware, the people in jail or prison are people who have substance abuse related issues. That is, they become addicted to some substance and then they've engaged in behavior that has gotten themselves in legal trouble. So it really is an interesting place in terms of that. And I've learned a lot about, the process of recovery through that whole situation.
One of the things that caught my attention immediately in your book is you're describing, the kind of type of clients that you're working with. You bring out the realization that they're really no different from you or me.
Right.
And, perhaps, explain a little bit like what kind of services are out there. And, it's even some of the, of course, anonymity, but, people, the types of stories that you have in your book that give hope and tell people that it's actually a good, hopeful process. It's worth the effort.
Oh, sure. I think it's really important to point out that, there's lots of ways to come back from opioid use disorder, lots of ways to come back from the circumstances that, would tend to land people in a jail or prison. And it's really important for people, I think, to understand that and talk about it, that, people generally get involved with a substance, whether it's alcohol or opioids or some other kind of addictive substance, through some kind of psychological reason. I mean, there's some kind of emotional or psychological issue that's going on with them. And in a sense, the term that's used a lot in the field is self-medication. So people will take a substance, whether it's an opioid or cocaine or alcohol or something else, because their internal emotional state is just really uncomfortable for them. And they feel like it's so uncomfortable that they need to do something to try to, take away the suffering, the discomfort that they're feeling. And so they get involved in a substance and they get some temporary relief, but then over time they become dependent on that substance and it leads them into trouble that usually has some kind of legal component as well. So almost everybody of the 2 million people who are incarcerated in the United States now are people with substance abuse problems, though really only about half of them are there for explicitly substance abuse related charges like uh, drug possession or something else. But almost always the behavior that they engaged in that got them into jail or prison had something to do with uh, their need to get money or their need to get more access to substances. Because one of the most difficult things for people who suffer from opioid use disorder or any other kind of addiction is the fear of withdrawal. So when you find yourself, and you're well aware of this as a nurse, when people get involved in substance dependency and then they don't have access to the substance that they're addicted to, the suffering is just really, really intense. And people will really dread, the possible outcome of that. So it really is a holistic process to look at the person and see how you can try to really understand what's going on with them and how you can increase the chances that they'll be able to recover successfully. And certainly what's described in the book is one particular strategy for helping people who suffer from opioid use disorder, which is the most common disorder these days for most people who are involved with drug addiction.
I think unless you're really in the throes of the addiction, you don't realize how quickly it spirals out of control. Um, yeah, I have a family member who had years ago in her younger years had an issue. She went on to have, a couple decades of very productive life. And then unfortunately, something happened, stress or whatever, that caused her to get back in that track.
Right.
And she did not have a good outcome. She left two children without a mother, and she was an intelligent person. She was a professional. She wasn't the stereotype homeless person, with no resources, that kind of thing. It can happen to anybody.
Exactly. So the stories in the book are stories of successful recovery. So unlike your family member, I mean, there's many, many people who are able to recover successfully. But as you say, I mean, all it takes is one slip to send you down that alley again. And oftentimes, that's the most common reason that people suffer a really negative outcome is that they maintain recovery for a period of time, and then when they relapse, as you're well aware, they use the substance at a level that they may have been using it at before, but when they use it this time, it's way too much for their system to tolerate, and they suffer, serious medical consequences.
And
Perhaps even death.
one
Right.
of the issues that I'm finding out on the streets, of course, is that it's, maybe when I was college age and things like that were easy to access, it was, I hate to say, use the word healthy, but it was a healthier form of a bad substance. It wasn't
Right.
laced with different poisons and things. And you really don't know what you're getting. And, if you might just think just one more time's not going to, that one more time could be the last time. Uh,
That's a great point. I mean, oftentimes now they talk about fentanyl, it's being shipped up from Mexico or it's coming from many, many areas of the world in large amounts. And people think they're taking, as you say, the same old opiates that they used maybe in the past or that they are familiar with and that are not as toxic as the pills or the other substances that they're getting in touch with now. So it really is a critical situation, and that's how a lot of negative outcomes occur is that people are not really certain about what they're taking. They buy something on the street, it's coming from they don't know where, and it may not be pure at all. It may be a number of different substances mixed together, and then they take it, and there are really dreadful consequences. So that's a great point, and the changing of the substances and the nature of the substance and the purity of the substance really has big uh, consequences.
well, I think a lot of people don't realize too, there is sometimes a genetic propensity to have an active part of your brain that, the addiction center. Um, and like if you know it's in your family, if you have, aunts, uncles, parents, whatever, that even if they were functional alcoholics or functional drug users, many people got actually hooked from like a sports accident. I've had clients that were in high school, a football injury. You had no way of knowing anything about, how you would react the first time they had it because they had that genetic propensity. It was like they were hooked, and that happens more often than people realize.
That's a great point. I mean, I've heard that phrase so many times when I've interviewed people in jails and prisons and talked to them about their addiction history, and they've said, I was an alcoholic or I was a drug addict from my first drug, my first use of drug. So that's a person who really is genetically predisposed to drug addiction. And oftentimes, as you say, it runs in families. You're more likely to become addicted faster and more seriously if you have a parent or grandparent even who was a substance dependent person themselves. It's something you kind of it is handed down from, grandparent to son to daughter, whatever. And so it really is a tough situation. And people are surprised by how difficult it is to stop, even if you pick it up a little bit. So somebody who has the genetic predisposition just needs to avoid the substance entirely because the slope of their addiction is likely to be particularly severe and difficult to stop. On the other hand, there will be people who can use substances for a medical reason, if they're having surgery or if they have chronic pain or something like that. I mean, they can use an opioid or something like that. And if they don't have that history, when they get a surgery and they no longer need the substance for medical reasons, they can stop and not experience much withdrawal at all. So it's amazing the vast difference in biological predisposition, to addiction that really makes a difference in the outcome for
And I
people.
think it's one of my nursing specialties is hospice. I'd like to just mention briefly, many families are afraid to put their hospice family member on the comfort meds, thinking that they're going to hasten the process. Um, the meds that are used in that, yes, they are opioid products, but they are very fast acting, short acting. They give you immediate comfort, and you don't need larger and larger doses to achieve the results. And it's very important that if you have a family member who's reached that chapter in their life, not to be afraid of. I've had adult children say, "But my mom's going to be addicted, if she's on this," and mom is 96 years old, and suffering very much with all kinds of pain from her debilitating cancer. Um, so that's just something to be aware of too, as we're talking about opioids. A lot of clients that are in treatment often are angry with their practitioners, saying, my doctor left me hanging. Now I have to go to a pain center, and it's so hard to get the meds. Um, there's a reason for that, and we're going to take a brief break, and I'll just mention that, and then you can go into some of the holistic modalities that you're talking about. We'll be right back. Thank you.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, welcome back to The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. My guest today is Dr. Michael J. Murphy, a co-author of Opioid Odyssey, and we're discussing some holistic approaches to addiction treatment. Go ahead, Mike.
So in the book, we really try to look at all of the elements that seem to be associated with successful substance abuse recovery. You know, for one thing, it's not always a dreadful outcome. I mean, there are many people who do get involved with opioid use for very understandable reasons. Maybe as you mentioned before, they suffer an injury, sports injury, or some kind of illness, and so they're prescribed an opioid, and they do become dependent on it over time, and then they want to stop that substance. And we really kind of looked at and tried to include stories in the book as to what the elements are of successful opioid use dependence recovery, since that's the biggest form of dependency really out there now. And so we found that it really is a holistic process. I mean, there's many elements that are included in successful substance abuse recovery. One of the things that we mentioned during the break is, the issue of self-esteem. So it's been in the big book, forever and been talked about at meetings, forever, that people who are addicted to something tend to be people who suffer from loss of self-esteem or low self-esteem. And it's really interesting to think about which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Does the person suffer from low self-esteem and therefore they tend to become substance dependent, or do they become substance dependent and the experiences they have then cause them to then suffer from low self-esteem? And maybe it's both, but I think that certainly that's a component of successful recovery, is really addressing the issue of low self-esteem. My work in jails and prisons involves lots of conversations with people who are participating actively in substance abuse programs inside the correctional setting. Sometimes they're called shock programs or boot camps or something like that. So basically, they're relatively challenging programs that last a few months and that involve a lot of rules, making your bed right, marching around with other people, listening to the instructions of the correctional officers, and participating in lots of educational classes in the program as well. And one of the things that I saw over and over again was how important it was for these people to succeed at completing that program, because it was something that was somewhat challenging, not easy to do. And if they succeeded, they got a certificate that said that they accomplished something hard, and that improved their self-esteem. So really, in my experience as a psychologist, the only thing that really improves our self-esteem is when we do something successfully that we believe is difficult. And recovery from substance abuse dependence is something that can certainly be difficult to accomplish. And when you accomplish some component of it, like the successful completion of a substance abuse treatment program, that improves your self-esteem, which then empowers you to be more likely to be successful in remaining clean and sober. So the self-esteem issue and the ability to be successful at the completion of the program was just a big component. The other piece that's really huge is the quality of the relationship with the provider. So the counselor or the therapist or the staff that they're working with, and that they have a powerful and warm relationship with that person, that they see them and they understand their situation, they know their history, they're supportive of them, and that they really can be honest with them and clear with them as their relationship goes on over time. And that supportive relationship really is very important in terms of the probability that the person is going to successfully recover from substance dependency. Then also a third thing is oftentimes the use of some kind of opioid blocker or substitute, um, like Suboxone, which is a medication that basically blocks the craving and stops much of the craving for the substance, and so the person feels like they're able to go on and not be as preoccupied with their need for the substance. So those pieces are very important. And then the process of having the treatment in an environment, I think that's important as well, that is a really positive environment. So when you go to the program, you go to your meetings, that it actually is a pleasant place to go to with people who have a positive attitude and people who really know how to deal in a caring way with their clients, and not treat them like they're less than decent human beings. So I think it's just really important. All those components, the supportive environment, the substituted treatment, and the efforts and opportunity to improve self-esteem really are components of successful recovery. And many people are successful. So the book really captures the stories of many people who are essentially just like you and me, as you said earlier. Anyone can become dependent on these substances, through no fault of their own or no intention at all. It just happens, and then they're confronted with the process of recovery, and it can be done successfully. If those components are put together, each in the correct proportion.
I think sometimes when we're talking about the structure and everything that's needed and the effort to make those decisions to stay clean, to get clean, um, and it's kind of a fallacy. Reality is just because you're in a locked up situation does not mean that you don't have access to the demons that have got you there to begin with. Unfortunately, but they say when you're trying to be successful in any goals, what is your why? What you got to have a reason to motivate, and it's not just to get out of lockup. I think everybody basically wants to be successful. Maybe it's to prove a bad family situation that you did it anyway. You got beyond where you came from. But a lot of times we forget about the families that are on the outside. While and there's a lot of guilt and shame for the parents that aren't there to be with those kids, maybe repeating a history cycle, a family cycle. Um, so I think, you know, you have to give yourself permission to just accept where you're at when you're starting and know that you have the power to change it, even if you don't believe it right away. You fake it till you make it, and somehow it convinces your brain that you're going to make it, and you're doing it for the kids that you don't get to see. Um, and in some situations, maybe you never have a relationship, but at least you gave it your best effort. Those are factors that are out of your control. But you learn other ways of coping and other skills. Exercise changes, brain chemicals. You become a productive member in society and have self respect, and all those are part of being holistic. Um,
Ye- Yeah, one of those, I mean, those certainly are, deep observations that really are just so significant, that people can access the supportive community. I mean, there's so many people out there who want to be of service to people and helping them to recover. I mean, there's so many times people will hear when they attend recovery meetings that one of the best things that ever happened to them, and it sounds paradoxical, was going to some kind of secure environment like a jail or prison, because it was there that they were able to finally break the the stuck trajectory of substance dependency, and they were able to stop and get a period of time when they were clean. And if you do get an extended period of time without substances, everything changes. The person's mentality changes, their attitude changes. They seem to recover their sense of personality again. I've interviewed so many people in jails and prisons who, when they arrived, were extremely negative and extremely unhappy and extremely adversarial. But then, a month or so later, or maybe a little more or even less, they will have transformed completely because the body is an amazing, as you know, self-cleaning machine over time. And if you don't use for a period of time and you do some decent exercise and you engage in some of the positive therapeutic experiences that are available to you, your spirit and your body will naturally cleanse itself and find its way back to being the person that you really have the potential to be when you're at your best. And that's the key. I mean, you have to be clean, obviously. And then when you get clean, naturally, the positive resources that you have, the potential that you have starts to emerge again. And you start to become the person that you would like to be. That feels better. You get more positive reinforcement from friends and family. One of the things that really happens a lot with me is that in interviewing people in jails is that most of whom are male, of course, like 95% of the people who are incarcerated are male, and they really long for that connection with their children. So one of the things that I've really worked on with people and tried to create a practice of is helping people who are in recovery to establish some kind of connection with their children just by, say, writing a letter, getting consent and the opportunity to write a letter to, say, their child who's out in the community and school, and sending that letter every week to them and letting them know that they're okay, they're recovering, they're doing fine, and they send their love and their best wishes to their child. And that really makes a difference for that child. I've talked to them on the other end too. It really improves the self-esteem of the child in the community to hear that they have a father or mother who's out there who loves them and is thinking about them every day and cares and sends a letter saying that they have those thoughts and feelings and wish them the best over a period of weeks and months. And, that really, really contributes to a positive outcome, not just for the recovering person, but also for the child who is hearing from their loving parent. Makes a big difference.
Well, I think one of the biggest reasons of going back to, doing something on the outside to get yourself back is because change is very scary. And that's a normal human trait. We're all afraid of something new that we don't, unfamiliar. If you're used to being locked up and controlled and you get out in the street and, it's like, maybe in a candy store or something, you just don't have the skills yet to do that. Many times they will actually find themselves going back, doing something just stupid just so they have the safety of knowing that they can't screw up when they're locked up. So there's a lot of work on your end when you're working in the facility. We're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. Thank you.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. it's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm back with Dr. Michael J. Murphy, co-author of Opioid Odyssey, and he's sharing some of his experiences, to give people hope that are on either side of the journey. What would you like to go from here?
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about on the break is how important the period of time is when people have a brief period of sobriety, and then they're either released from a program or they're once again on their own in the community. And there really is a period of increased anxiety and discomfort that really is oftentimes associated with relapse. So part of a holistic approach is really having a plan for those times when you're likely to be confronted by temptation in some pretty powerful ways. So it's called a comprehensive relapse prevention plan, planning for what are called high risk situations when you might, and certainly one of them is when you're walking out of a correctional facility or a treatment program or some kind of place where you were able to be clean for a while and now you're confronted with, a lot more opportunity for temptation than you had before. So I think, at that point, it's just really important to be busy, to be involved, with a program, with supportive people who you see a lot. And that's why the idea of a sponsor is so important in many recovery programs like AA or NA. You have a person to whom you're really connected, and they really make it a point to talk to you every day. Most sponsors will call a person, at least a couple of times a day, just to keep right with them and let them know that they're always there and that they have somebody who is aware of their movement through the day without using, the harmful substance. And that the point is just to get through the day, like the program says, one day at a time. All you need to worry about is getting through today. Tomorrow you can worry about tomorrow. But, the point is to get through today and have a supportive system that helps you to just get through that day, that moment, that hour, whenever it is. And so I think that really is, one of the keys to success, as people have seen a lot, that people who are in a program or in a correctional facility and relapse, chronically after they get out and then come back around again. So the rate of reincarceration for some people is just extremely high. And the key is to create structure that will allow them to make it through the time when they get out. Sometimes it's a halfway house, sometimes it's attachment to treatment programs, but certainly there needs to be a lot of attention to just maintaining a positive attitude. Each day, every day, every week, every month, for the rest of your life. That's the key.
Well, I think one topic that comes up on many of my shows are the gratitude philosophies. And, no matter how
Right.
bad your situation seems, Marty Seligman, a author at a University of Penn, wrote a book, Authentic Happiness. And it's not about being happy, it's just about getting through the day, like you say. But if you can list 2 to 3 things that you can be grateful, like I'm sure most of your clients have friends and family that are no longer even able to fight the battle because they're gone. You can be
Right.
grateful that you're here to go through this hell. It's going to be hard, but you're still here. You know, and there's a lot of things to be great. You be grateful for your sponsor. Be grateful that you're giving a second chance on life.
Yeah, be grateful for the day, just the opportunity to walk down the street, to go have a bit of lunch with your friends, to have a job, to have, some socialization, to be able to just live this life as best you can, and to foster your relationships with your loved ones. I think that's the key, is that substance dependence is almost always a period of time when you're not able to be present for those who you care for and who care for you. The substance sort of takes you away. And when you look into the eyes of a person who's actively using, you can tell that they're kind of not really there. And then when they're clean and sober again, you can tell that they're back. And so the quality of those relationships and the power of that connection is just so significant in maintaining, uh, your successful way on, the path of recovery, is that sense of really being present again. So as you say, you can be grateful for the opportunity to have those relationships again, to be present. So many parents I've talked to, and their son or daughter becomes clean and sober again, they're just amazed. They say, "Oh, he or she is back. They're back. They're back." They could tell that they really weren't there for the months or years that they were using, but then when they're clean and sober, they're present again. And what it is that they're able to see and care about and be aware of, um, the status of the other person. They're not totally preoccupied by the needs of the substance and recovery, and worry about getting more of the drug or the substance. They're actually able to understand that there are other people in the world, and they have loved ones, and to share that bond of love that really is a part of, being a human being, um, uh, once again. And so you'll find oftentimes that the rooms, the recovery rooms, AA, NA, whatever, even in jails and prisons, are filled with, love and care and compassion in ways that it's really amazing to see and perceive and share. So it's a great thing. And people like you, and I think others who really understand that and can give people the support and caring and clarity and real information that they need, the relatedness that they need, is just a huge part in terms of, contributing to our society and to, um, the well-being of other people.
And I think when you're not in monkey brain and you can have a realistic view, you understand uh, that it's unrealistic expectations on your part or the other, the people you're trying to reconnect with. And you can't control how they're reacting. You can only control your reactions to the situation. And part of being loving and accepting of yourself is to understand that, you know, I get it. If I was in their shoes, I'd be angry too. I wasn't there when they needed me, but it's okay. I'll just keep trying. Um, and some of the holistic skills and techniques like mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, um, even some of the energy tapping modalities, things like that. Those are like kind of quick holistic fixes to tone down the emotional reactions in the moment. And, there's all kinds of skills that even on your end, on the inside, you could be teaching them to prepare them, to have tools when they get outside. Because it's not easy and nobody's pretending that it is. Uh,
Right. Those are interventions that make such a difference in terms of teaching the person that they can be empowered to make a difference in their own state, right? So if you practice meditation, even if you sit down and you focus on your breathing, or you download a meditation app and you sit and you meditate for 15 or 20 minutes, you really change your own internal state. And when you do that and you actually experience the process of feeling anxious and nervous and tired and distracted, then you meditate for a period of time and you feel better. You feel somewhat calmer. You feel more grounded. Uh, your ability to make that difference empowers you and allows you to feel like you have the capacity to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And the first thing is to recover, to be clean and sober through a day, another hour, another week, another year, hopefully your lifetime. So it really is so empowering to be able to apply those practices that are part of a healthy life. And, you know, so, so I think meditation is a huge one. I spend a lot of time training people and helping people to practice meditation successfully. And it really can make a huge difference as a modality of self-care, that helps people to feel like, they're able to get through the tough moments. And
Even things just as simple, the breathing exercises, the box breathing and other techniques like that, they're like almost instant quick fixes that you don't need any insurance for. You can learn these skills with a lot of resources are on the internet and it's free. Um, and I think more and more programs are using it also. But there has to be, with the unrealistic expectations, you can't have unrealistic expectations on yourself either.
right,
You have to understand that your body and your mind is so used to behaving in a certain way because that's what your drug of choice made you act like. And even in the absence of that substance, they have the phrase dry drunk. You still have some of those alcoholic behaviors and interpersonal problems, you know, that you can't blame on the alcohol actively using, but it's something that can be overcome. The mind is strong and wants to please and can help you, overcome this and be successful. And it's also important to know for the people that I can do this on myself without help. It's a real medical emergency if you're going through withdrawal and you don't have professional assistance. There are certain types of withdrawal that you need some emergency medication to get you through it, or the outcome is, there is no outcome. You'll be at the morgue, if it's not done medically supervised. So a lot of people in their monkey brain states and the active addictions, they don't realize that, because sometimes you think you're all powerful. The drugs make you feel on top of the world. You can accomplish anything, and you think you can even stop without trying. Just anytime you say you're going to stop, and if you're physiologically addicted, it's not going to happen that easily.
right. So connected with that is the emotional volatility that goes along with using a substance or being in withdrawal from a substance, the ups and downs, and the fact that, if you are using your emotions and feelings are going way up when you have the substance and way down when you're in withdrawal. So your life is a roller coaster ride that's really, becomes difficult to tolerate and really can contribute to impulsive decisions that are not very intelligent in terms of the self-care of the person and their loved ones. So it really is important to work on those emotional management skills. Part of that is meditation, exercise, group meetings, reading, doing a lot of activities that allow you to regulate your own internal state. And, an addict really said to me one time that, dependency, drug addiction is using anything outside yourself to control what happens inside yourself. And so, once you learn how to empower yourself to manage your own internal state, that's the key in maintaining recovery.
Okay, we'll be right back for our final segment and sum everything up. Thank you.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Hi, everybody. As we're getting ready to close our show, I want to remind people that although our topic was addictions and that aspect of mental health, the holidays are coming up. It's a rough time for a lot of people. It doesn't mean just accept it, say, I'm always unhappy and depressed at the holidays. We're all missing people that aren't there anymore at the holidays. The skills we're talking about can apply to all of those situations. And I'm going to let Dr. Michael just kind of close us with a good positive message. And, and just remember that just because we're giving you awareness about the suicide hotline in September, it does apply for, 365 days a year. There's help out there. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, one of the things that occurs on the holidays is the expectation that we're going to have a great time. And maybe if you happen to be a person who doesn't happen to have family around you in a supportive or pleasant way, or maybe you don't have the opportunity to take advantage of what we think is involved in the stereotypical idea of the holidays, presents and gifts and celebrating and parties and all that stuff. Many people have a negative reaction to the holidays, as you say, because they realize that for them, Christmas or whatever it is just another day, and that they have to get through and manage for themselves. And I think that brings back the message that we're all the same. We're all here in this world to live and learn and to, use our time on the planet in our lifetimes to grow as human beings. And, recovery is, something that all of us need. All of us need a program of recovery in life so that we can be as productive as we possibly can be in terms of this opportunity to be here. And I think, that's what's gratifying, is when we feel like we are actualizing ourselves. We're using our time to love others, care for others, be present for others and ourselves. And when we do that, we really feel like we're able to make our contribution to the world that we were meant to provide. And, so then we feel like we have had a successful lifetime.
I think I'd like to bring up too, it might seem kind of trite, but none of us grew up in Leave It to Beaver's household. And, we
Right.
didn't have social media back then, but we compared, what was going on in our house with the Brady Bunch and Leave It to Beaver. And, you got to understand we're all human, we're all alike. And that was just actors, it's not real life. So it's all about doing the best we can and just not giving up. And there is help out there. Talking does help to people. If you don't have a therapist, start with a religious mentor, perhaps, or a good friend that you can trust. But there's help out there, so don't give up. And everybody is worth something. We all have a value, and that's important to remember.
That's the
So,
truth, and thank you for all that wisdom and the opportunity to share what we shared today.
well, thank you for coming on the show this week. Please remember to like and share as you're watching. Both Michael has a YouTube channel, and mine is The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. And if you have any questions or need any resources in whatever locale that you reside in, we have access to that information. Please reach out. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.